day, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion on developing skills for a resilient and digitally enabled workforce in the region. My name is Max Loh, and I'm your moderator for this panel discussion. As we all look towards recovery and emerging stronger in a post-COVID or even co-COVID world, technological advances and digitalization have changed the way we live, work, and play. Corporates must be agile, adaptive, and invest in upskilling and reskilling their staff to ensure the continued relevance of their workforce. At the same time, workers must proactively engage in lifelong learning to remain employable. Let me now introduce the esteemed panel who will share their thoughts and perspectives on this. First, Dr. Gok Soon Joo, who is the Chief Futurist and Chief Skills Officer at Skills Future Singapore. Then we have Patrick Tay, Assistant Secretary General at NTUC, Susan Cheong, Talent Acquisition Group Head at DBS Bank, and last but not least, Ronald Tay, Executive Director, APAC Head of Learning and Development, Asset and Wealth Management at JP Morgan Chase. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'll start and kick off the questions, and maybe the first I'll direct it at Soon Joo. So Soon Joo, digitalization, technology transformation will continue to shape businesses and employment. What, in your view, are the critical skill sets, whether they be existing, new, or emerging, which would be required for the future? And how can people go about being relevant and acquiring those skills when they do not know what's out there and what's needed for themselves? And what can employers, especially I think SMEs, do to develop human capital in this respect?
Thank you. Good morning to all. Thanks, Max, for the intro. Yeah, I think these are very good questions. I fully agree with what Max's opening statement about the employer's role in driving the change and developing the skill set of the workforce. Maybe to help everybody understand the skills needs of our economy, let me share screen and show some of the, okay, give me a second. Can everybody see my screen? Yep. Okay, so what I'm showing here is a skill heat map that we have done for Singapore economy. On the x-axis on top, you see all the abbreviations are the 23 ITM sector, industry transformation sector, that we have been embarking on over the last few years. On the vertical axis, these are the top, we call it the skills cluster, the key skills cluster we have identified. So there are about 10 of them here. And this 23 priority industry, if you look at the heat map, means the darker the color means the number of workers needed these skills in the next 3 to 5 years as indicated. So if you look across the top two skill set, you can see that typically IT and creative media skill sets are very, very important as perceived by the employers across many industries. The second one is actually about how to scan the business environmental changes, the use of data and the use of research to understand what is in need. These are the top two skill sets needed across over the next few years. These are just, because I don't have time to go through in detail, but top line will be things like 3D animations, applications, development, IoT of things management. Then the second one, in terms of data, will be very much on business environmental analysis, data analytics, and computational modeling. Let me quickly go on to the next one. If you look at the kind of skills that workers have today versus skills that employers desire to have, the orange bar shows that this is a proxy. Workers may not have the skills versus the blue bar, workers have the skills as reported by employer. So you look at it is IT and media, creative media has a huge demand that we need to bridge the gap. Secondly is same thing for the kind of data and research. So we look at the top three industry on the right-hand side, wholesale trade the PMET in the wholesale trade sector will require a lot of this kind of IT creative media. And then you look at the logistic will be roughly half for PMET and non-PMET. And then for financial services will be primarily more of the non-PMET, non-executive role will need to have upskill in this area. Then the second high skills area, the high demand skill area in terms of data and analytics and research. You look at it, then the top in demand, as employers say so, is logistics sector, retail sector, and ICT and media sector. So that's in a nutshell explain the top kind of skills that is needed. But that said, I just want to highlight very important things that we have discussed with the union, with the employer, also with university and polytechnics. And we come together and realize that underpinning all these critical technical skills, we call it hard skills needed, actually foundationally, the critical core skills of our people and our workforce are very equally important, if not more important. So like there are three clusters that we have identified task fast. Staying relevant, which is actually self-efficacy, self-management, how you know what to learn, how do you know that your work environment has changes, the kind of industry has moved forward, how to be adaptive, how to be digitally savvy. This is the fundamental there about self-efficacy. Then I want to jump over to the one on the extreme left, which is thinking skills. And thinking skills, the cognitive ability become more important as we work with machines, because this is where we people make the difference. The way we do problem solving, decision making, sense making, and across the transdisciplinary thinking, which is how we think across various disciplines, from computational thinking to the other type of very creative thinking, which is more right brain. And then, of course, last but not least is how we work with others, because that human context is still very important. We work globally across different cities, across different teams, different time zones, and how do we work with people? And according to the employers who give us the feedback to fine-tune this set of critical core skills, is developing people become everybody's job. It's not just about L&D, HR department, but every line supervisor, every one of us must help each other learn and grow along the way. Customer centricity is very core in this future piece moving forward. Building inclusivity, extremely important. Collaborations, communication is beyond just knowing how to present, but how do we also influence others? So in a nutshell, I very quickly explain that these are the kind of technical skills needed and also the soft skills needed that we have identified together with our industry. So I'll just pause here and go back to Max, whether you have any further follow-up questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sunju. I think that's a really quick and very holistic way of mapping up the demand and really then a bit of supply side of things. But we'll come back to you if you want to join the other questions. But let me sort of pivot now to Patrick, because you sort of laid out the landscape. But Patrick, I think, talks about this every day, which is about skilling, lifelong learning. These are the buzzwords, really for talent and the workforce. So from your perspective, Patrick, what can workers do to really upskill, multi-skill? SM Taman, recently spoke about developing Singaporeans at every skill level, including deepening their skills, moving on to adjacent skills, or even switching sectors altogether, because we do have a sectoral ups and downs that are happening in the marketplace. What's your take on this? What should we all focus on? And then particularly, what is the labor movement from your perspective, helping workers in this regard?
Yeah, thanks, Max. And of course, thanks, Sunju, for earlier sharing some of the skills maps and the heat map. Very, very useful and instructive. In fact, we have been working very, very closely, of course, the labor movement together with our tripartite partners. So actually, we did compare quite a bit of notes and work quite closely together with Sunju as well in the various clusters. So I think she alluded to earlier to the industry transformation map, the 23 different clusters. I think that provides a very good skills framework of where the in-demand skills are and what is lies ahead. I think, of course, what has happened in the last 6 months has kind of like accelerated many of the things that we wanted to do and we have to do. And we all know that even prior to this entire COVID-19 pandemic, we've been very busy, evangelizing on lifelong learning and continuing education and training at all levels and all sectors and all companies. In fact, one key thing that the labour movement has been working very, very closely with our partners is in this area of forming company training committees, and at a company level and as well as at industry level, trying to get workers not just reskilled, multi-skilled, but also pick up some of the in-demand skills so that we can weather them through any storms. And of course, in the last 6 months, we all know the entire virtual and digital storm has kind of transformed the way we do things. Even like myself, I was just sharing with some of my colleagues, in the last 6 months, I've used more virtual seminar and meetings than I have in the last 25 years of my working career. So I think all of us had to like pivot and navigate the storm. And actually one interesting anecdote I wanted to share is during the circuit breaker, we all knew that many employers were like rolling out many of these digital, offline, or should I say virtual catch-ups, engagements, meetings, town halls, and what have you. But interestingly, I think quite a number of companies, those that have managed to pivot actually are riding the wave. But of course, there are some companies, yes, at all levels, I think training and being able to occupy or to adapt to this digital tech and the digital space is very, very important. One story would be a company, senior management very, very well-versed with technology and tech. Middle management also very, very well versed. But when they started issuing laptops and all these devices to everyone in the company line, there you go. Some of the workers, perhaps even at the rank and file level, may not be up to speed with some of these technology, and therefore I can't emphasize more. We are as strong as the weakest link. So I think it's not just at middle, senior, but at every levels, I think everyone has to ride that wave and be equipped. So I think I can't emphasize more the need for reskilling, and this whole pandemic has kind of like accelerated everything that we wanted to do in terms of smart nation, in terms of lifelong learning, in terms of individual responsibility and initiative to embrace learning. As you know, Singapore in the last couple of years have moved from not just a purely employer based, but also the expanded through Skills Future to the individual initiated space of learning. So I think it's both ways, and of course these are some of the efforts that we have been doing. And I just wanted to just reiterate what Sunju earlier shared, and she did a very technical, very highly instructive and very data-based kind of explanation. But I think we could, in a way, pigeonhole into the three main skills that workers need to have. Firstly, the technical skills, which you referred to. Technical skills to be able to do the jobs competently. Secondly, of course, the digital skills, ever more important. We said that the last 3 years, but the last 6 months have proven to us that we need to do this even yesterday. And finally, the adaptive skills. Earlier on, she shared a slide on communication, and particularly now the ability to adapt to the change. Not just adapt, but of course embrace the change, and of course to stay agile. I think now you see new growth sectors, we need to see new opportunities. So that's where, Max, your question on adjacent skills and exploring new sectors is very, very important. I think unfortunately, with what's happening around the globe, companies are re-strategizing, reorganizing, relooking at the way they used to do things, and now what's the way forward in the next normal in this so-called low-touch economy. So I think there will be a lot of transformation, a lot of adjusting at all levels, management, middle management, including every single worker. So I think that's very, very important to be able to look at where these new opportunities are and to keep an open mind. I think workers need to keep an open mind that it's time to pick up new skills. If you are already in a job or in a job, to pick up skills to segue into new opportunities, perhaps even a redeployment, to do another role and another role where there's in demand for. I know many are affected. I think a lot of anxieties and fears out there because of the labor market figures in the first half. You're looking at more retrenchments and increasingly higher unemployment. So I think important. I think employers to redesign their jobs and to provide, particularly those with growth opportunities, to see how we can tap on some of these national schemes and funding. Quite exciting. I think we have never been so generous before. I mean, in terms of training, in terms of hiring of workers. I think the key is for employers to leverage and to maximize these schemes, and for the workers to keep an open mind and to pick up some of these skills. Not easy, easier said and done, but I think I think with some tenacity, we'll be able to do it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick. And I was going to take up that point before I moved over to Susan and Ronald, which was that, but you sort of cut my question when you said it's easier said than done. Because I was going to ask you, you know, and this actually aligns with the previous presentation before the panel discussion, that talked about skills being multidisciplinary in nature, which would include domain knowledge, technological skills, and then you talked about adaptive skills, or well, some people call it business acumen, you know, which is more soft in that sense. But is it really easier said than done? And maybe Sunju can also weigh in on this.
Yeah, I think definitely because it's. I mean, we talk. These are very some of these. Okay, I hate to use the word soft skills, but I would like to use the word critical skills. These critical skills are important to navigate. I mean, things like communication. I think we've been doing so much survey, including Sunju's survey earlier, or analysis. Communication is one big gap, particularly for Asian countries and Asians in general. I think that's something that is why I say it's easier said than done. I mean, you to be able to communicate in a simple, concise, succinct, and to be able to get a message to fellow workers, to management, to customers, to buyers, etc. I think it's not an easy thing. This is just but one example. But I also alluded to on being agile and adaptable. Yeah, I think it is something which probably individually you have to pick yourselves up. There are programs, change management programs, which I know many companies have put many of their employees through because of the entire industry transformation and restructuring that we're doing across different sectors. So I think change management, yes, you can pick up the necessary skills, but at the end of the day, I think it's the individual attributes and attitude and the mindset. So I think that goes into the very, very important word. I'm sure all my fellow panelists will agree. You know, the key word is mindset. Whether it's mindset employers, mindset of employees, and of course mindset on each and every one of us, how we are able to embrace some of these things that are happening right in our face.
Yeah, Max, I just want to jump in here before you ask Susan and Ronald to comment on skills rescaling. I think over the last few years, because the tripartite, the government, the industries, employers, and the union has been coming together to look into the understanding develop the skills framework for the ITM sector. So now we have a common language to talk about identifying skills. What skill are we talking about? Is it data analytics? Is it digital skills? I think so. The common skill set, common language is there. It is now important for us to ask ourselves, working with the employer, to say that where are the business going forward? What kind of transformation they want to do? How does it impact does the workforce, that their workforce have the right skill sets now? How long do they take to be able to attain the new skill set, so that the transformation and the workforce capabilities in tandem? Because without either one, the training has no purpose, and then without the business transformation, without the skill set, you can't move. So I think it's how do we calibrate? I think later on, Ronald and Susan can share their own DBS journey and their JP Morgan, your organizations, how you are leading that kind of digital transformation, how you plan your workforce forward. So the skill stock analysis, the understanding what skills you have, and then knowing what is that new additional you need to top up and shape the kind of skills you need, and even sometimes to change the workforce job content, redesign their job, because the old job may disappear and they need to do a new job, and employers have to plan for this. I think it's quite important. Thanks.
Thank you. So that's a good segue because I'm going to pose the next questions to both Susan and Ronald. Susan gets to go first because she's the lady in the conversation. So Susan and Ronald, both of you belong to companies which are very forward-looking and really at the forefront of agile transformation. Can you share how have your companies adapted to the challenges brought about by COVID-19, whether it be in the areas of digital adoption, transformation, or agile ways of working? And then what are the challenges that you all faced, and how did you all overcome them? Susan, please.
Yep. Okay, the lady shall go first. Thanks, Max. Yep. I think the COVID has really taught us a lot of things. I think alluding to the same themes that Patrick and Sunju covered, right? I'll touch on the technical and the digital one first. I think for us, right, the ability to be able to respond very nimbly to the whole COVID situation, really the digital transformation that comes along with it, the technology that comes along with it is a very big piece. Just an example, I think for us in DBS, we are slightly in a space whereby more than 90% of our staff already are quite used to using laptops. They use it in the course of their work. But to actually switch from working in the office to working from home, right? That actually calls for, I think, a lot of harnessing of digital technology. And of course, in the industry where we are in banking and financial industry, right? We need to be able to do that without compromising, on the security. That was actually a big piece, which I don't want to underestimate. Everything is in place, but when you shift majority of the workforce to working remotely, that is something that was actually huge for us to ensure is done and done very swiftly. And I think the other thing about that whole agility and the movement also is the business acumen that was mentioned at the level of the, I would say probably the business managers level. How do you actually bring the entire team, the workforce together to steer people ahead, to say that this is how we need to respond very nimbly. Every day things are changing. The situation was changing by the day. How do we then respond? Because there's a huge piece of work we needed to do, which is for our customers. How do we ensure that the whole infrastructure piece is in place? And how do we bring our customers along with us during that situation of COVID, leveraging technology, and then at the same time, not forgetting, I would call the soft skills, I think the very critical skills of bringing people along, the people aspects of it. And of course, the technology infrastructure can all be in place. One thing we learned from the entire situation during COVID, especially during the initial stage of circuit breaker, was that you can have everything in place, you can teach, you can actually coach, you can train people, right? But one thing we should not forget is the soft skill part of how do you ensure people are comfortable at home? The mental wellness piece, how are people coping? That was something which we frankly had to learn along the way. We were efficient, and that was what we focused on, ensuring that productivity was actually maintained, and it was maintained very well. There came to a stage of the curve where we were more concerned about, is everybody coping well at home? And can people cope amidst all the expectations? Are we exercising understanding, patience? Because the context of where people are working are different. In fact, the intensity is actually higher than when people were working in the office. So those were the learnings we had as an organization. And of course, about the last piece about continuous learning, in fact, we managed to shift, I think, 95% of our learning online. And it was quite amazing. It was very intense because we went through 1 or 2 full days of virtual learning, everybody staring at the screens of the laptop. But we amazed ourselves because we managed to pull it through. Actually, some of the people felt that people were more attentive looking at your screens because, your trainers could see who's on, who's off, rather than in a classroom context where we tend to talk. So those were some of the very interesting learnings we had in the last few months.
Thank you. Ronald, your take on this in your organization?
Thanks, Max. I'll spend some time talking a little bit about some of the key challenges we face, both from the employee, manager, the talent and learning team's perspective, and also some of the key responses that we had to adapt to some of these key challenges. I think just broadly speaking, JP Morgan is an entire firm, it's about 250,000 people strong. In Singapore, it's about 3,000 plus. We see this really as the world's largest work from home experiment. At some point, we have over 180,000 people working from home, just to give you a sense of the global scale of it. And just really within a very short time, over 90% of our even employee population in Singapore had to work from home. And working from home really and integrating home and life is very different from different people. I'm sure for most of you, even as you can see it from the employee point of view, with those with families, it was really a challenge in balancing home as well as work priorities. Those with children had to grapple with home-based learning. But even for the singles working from home, we also had quite a lot of overseas employees working alone in a foreign country, such as in Singapore or Hong Kong. And then you had to deal with a lot of these social isolation issues that you never really had to grapple with, when people are all going to the office. And then subsequently for the managers, then that was the other challenge where you had to really ensure that not only work is on what we call BAU or business as usual basis, But then they had to really adapt into managing remote teams, motivating their teams, staying in touch with them, doing a lot of virtual coffee chats and cocktail hours, etc. And then for us, finally, in terms of the key challenge as learning and talent teams, to grapple really the transition from classroom training into virtual training. I think in the past, we all know from the banking side, there's a lot of these online regulatory compliance training people have to go through, but it's a bit of a click of the button. And we really now have to transition to really make virtual and online learning adaptive and, more important, applicative to what they do on a learning basis. So I think from the response perspective, I like to see it from the ABC way. One is adopting new technologies and tools for collaboration. Suffice to say, pretty much everyone had moved into Zoom as a platform for team communication and collaboration. But what do you do with all of the tools that people use traditionally face-to-face when they collaborate together? So for that, we've adapted some bespoke JP Morgan collaboration tools. We call it Agile Central. So teams can now virtually utilize whiteboards. They can use Post-its on their laptops. So it really simulates a form of team brainstorming when we're coming together and thinking of solutions for the workplace. Pretty much as a Zoom platform, our entire analyst and summer intern training was done all over Zoom. We had worried that that might impact traditional evaluations when it's not face-to-face, but pretty happy to say that, in fact, in some ways through Zoom, and I think Susan also talked about it, the whole inclusive nature of having Zoom where everyone occupies a window actually adds to the inclusiveness of the training. So in terms of evaluations, we're really happy to say that the evaluations are even higher than we used to be on the face-to-face platform. The B talks about kind of bringing in new skills to cope with the present realities. So we really had to launch several new courses to help both managers and teams deal with this kind of new norm. Programs such as leading in turbulent times, managing virtual teams, team resilient practices were all launched over these past few months. Things that we never had to do around presenting virtually on the Zoom platform. I'm sure for many of us, you had scary examples of people where their wallpaper, virtual wallpaper, or what they see behind is not appropriate, lighting was too dark. So all these things we had to help our clients, advisors, as well as our employees really deal with a remote partnership presenting virtually with the clients. And then the Metro M, we had to help them really think around what does flexibility in the workplace mean for you, focusing on outcomes to be delivered rather than time on seats, and encouraging flexibility for staff to manage their schedules and hours dynamically. And then finally, from the C perspective, I think it's a little about capability building for a future-ready generation. So kind of accelerating the competencies and capabilities. We've traditionally had for our technologists in the firm, we have about over 50,000 technologists in the firm. And so things like coding, cloud technology, artificial intelligence, data decision making used to be in the confines of technologists. But we found that over the past 6 months, we had to really push it out to the businesses because the business were asking for it. So we've launched a lot of training such as design thinking, data decision making, even for the new analysts that join our firm, we've put them through 3 weeks of intensive Python training. So they really appreciate the technology behind some of the banking solutions that we launched for our clients as well. So that's kind of essentially the ABC that we've responded to some of these key challenges.
Thanks, Ronald. We do have to go to a live Q&A session in about 2 minutes, but I really have to ask this question for all panelists. So I'll probably steal a bit of time, 3 minutes from the live Q&A. I haven't seen that many questions come in yet, but I'm sure it will come. And this is really open to everyone who wants to weigh in on this, because I think just to share, how would you rate, our reskilling efforts so far in Singapore? And, how do we create a learning organization and a learning people is the other question that there's always on my mind. What can be done further in terms of the entire ecosystem to, in my words, Uberize learning, target reskilling, and build that ecosystem, which I think will stand us in good stead going forward. So I'm just going to open it up to anyone who has comments on this.
Yeah, Max, maybe I go first. Thanks for these very good questions. Just to share very quickly, if you look at in 2015, the training participation rate of Singapore's workforce is about 35%. 2019, last year, we managed to achieve 48.5%. So there is a very steady increase in training participation rate, which is very heartening it reflects the individual's efforts to use the skills future credits. It also reflects the employer's recognitions that reskilling has to take on even quicken the pace and then identify the causes. And of course, we also recognize that the union has been mobilizing on the ground through their CTC, through their industry union branches, and mobilizing people. And I think the skill ecosystem is shaping up very well. Even during the COVID-19, I just want to share with everybody is in April, when we know that the circuit breaker is going to set in, very quickly, all our courses went online. And this takes the whole industry to mobilize it. It's not easy because we have to make sure that the adult educators across the sector all are able to do that. And we were very heartened to say that the momentum didn't stop. Actually, it went up higher to help people to go online. And some even took extra effort to say that, make sure that they send packages out to people so that they receive a package, they open the hard copy stuff, they know how to turn on the machine, they know how to even create interesting, funny stuff like a thumbs up stuff to say that, okay, it's not just about clicking. If you don't know how to click, at least you use this card to thumbs up, you know. So I think there's a lot of effort ongoing across all the continuing education and training sector to very quickly ramp up. So I think the whole skill ecosystem really, like I said before, it requires individuals' willingness to take on, to use skill future credit to think about their what they want to upskills in order to continue to be relevant. And employers play a very important role. I think we saw from DBS and JP Morgan's example, right? Ronald and Susan talked about how they very quickly roll out courses relevant to engage the continuous learning so they never stop. And the labor movement on the ground as well, working with us, very quickly identify the kind of skills gap, and then we can quickly roll the courses, get our IHL, get our training provider to roll the courses out. And this is fundamentally important. Thanks.
I think maybe I'll just
Patrick, please.
Yeah, I'll just add in on that. I think yes, I think Sunju has the figures all right. I think generally we're seeing many more people in terms of training participation has gone up. I think particularly this year, I think we may think that because of circuit breaker and everything else, actually you would have intuitively thought that training would have gone down, but actually you'd be surprised. In fact, Ronald and Susan are two good examples. I think many organizations and companies, I think particularly making use and leveraging on a downtime to try to deliver training. Of course, because of the circuit breaker and the safe distancing restrictions, we couldn't do a lot of face-to-face training, the traditional ones. But I think because of that, we were really, had to pivot. And I know many organizations, training providers, including the labor movement through E2I as well as our Learning Hub, have been rolling out a series of programs, e-based, e-learning. And in fact, I would say the whole entire e-learning agenda has kind of accelerated. We've been trying hard for so many years to drive e-learning and blended learning. But I think these 6 months have really propelled this industry really forward. So even in the mainstream schools, and of course now with emphasis on CET, continuous education and training, I think e-learning and reskilling will take a new norm and new form. At the same time, also, I am heartened to share that that even at the company level, as well as the industry level, all taking very conscious and concerted efforts to drive this. Because I think, say all you want, in the labor movement, we've done some surveys, some analysis, including some ground engagements, and then there is definitely a direct correlation between skills acquisition, training, and education to upward social mobility. So I think it's very, very important. I think this agenda of reskilling and upgrading is very, very vital to bring our workforce to embrace some of the future jobs there's already dawned upon us, and in fact more new opportunities.
I think in the response to what the government has been doing in terms of encouraging the learning mindset, I think first off, from our perspective as employers, we really appreciate a lot of initiatives that the government and IBF and in partnership with learning institutions have launched. And we've also been on board in many of these. So in the recent months, we've recruited more people who are involved in the technology, finance, immersion program. There was an initial subsidy program called IPO, so you can send people out for a couple of months to up to 2 years, where they can go on overseas assignment. That's a really great platform to raise the pipeline leaders. Even at the senior leaders, you have the Asian financial leadership programs, where you can start to build pipeline of leaders into the organization, many of which, of course, are heavily subsidized. In the private banking side, we have continuous professional development, which used to send our leaders to the Wealth Management Institute for training courses. And there's a bit of a laborious process. You have to pay the full fee, then claim from Skills Development Fund. But even in response to some of this feedback, I think they've been very, very adaptive. Now you only pay the net fee. So someone who's about 40 years old just pays 10% of the entire course fee. So I think some of these things we really, really appreciate from the government's perspective. There was a question from Mecho around and I think that's a very prevalent issue. How do we make sure that those have been in the same role for 15, 20 years, how do they adapt to the younger workforce? And I think in response to some of these things, we've also recognized the fact that we've had people who spent 20, 30 years. In fact, within our firm, with someone that spent 50 years in the organization, is a very senior private banker within the firm. And I think part of it is continuing to instill a growth mindset. So we've pretty much across all the levels of organization, use Carol Dweck's growth mindset as a nomenclature or as a language of learning, helping everyone learn. And it's really not our fixed mindset that will cripple us, but making sure that we're always learning, and mistakes is okay. And agile thinking is all about that. Learn fast and fail fast, but then adapt very quickly. And then the other thing that I think we've also adopted, we have a new learning management system where instead of you clicking around to look for what to look for to learn, it does a self-assessment of some of your key skills. So as you assess yourself, then it auto-populates what are some of the skills gaps that you have, and it pushes learning to you. We're also moving much more into mobile learning as well. So there's learning on the go, even as you're going for a jog or on a commute, it's an opportunity for you to pick up learning. So whether it's a young millennial or someone that's 15, 20 years, I think there's really no excuse once you have the mindset and capability hand in hand together.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Max, I would like to add on to say that I pivot slightly away from learning. We've spoken a lot about learning. For me, I think reskilling, one piece of that which is actually important is really about matching of skill sets to jobs that will change, have gone away, and what jobs will come next. I think that's a very big piece other than learning itself, about matching of jobs and how do we ensure that, we actually prepare people for new jobs or new areas that they need to actually go into. So I think it's important not to forget about the piece of the deliberate skills matching, jobs matching. So that's the piece that I wanted to chime in and add on.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I need to quickly now pivot to the question and answer session, which is a lot of questions have come in, and we do need to try and address, well, at least some of them, because we don't have enough time, but I'm sure we can mull over those questions and somehow get back to the participants in due course, offline, well, still online, but on another occasion. So let me just try and summarize this, because some of these questions I think are really, really pertinent. The first question really is, yes, and it's back to the easier said than done, right? Because the question was really, how about people who have been entrenched doing the same thing for the last 20 years? How do they change? How do they adapt? And how can they catch up? Because they are obviously going to be further behind, perhaps, from the digital natives that are out there. And then how do you switch mid-career? Because does that mean taking a step back? So let's put that on hold first while I look at some of the other questions. And the other parts of it is really about learning, still back to learning. Can we do more in terms of industry learning? Can there be more opportunities out there? Because learning is actually now seems to be driven by industry, provided by training providers, as opposed to what is the demand that's out there for businesses, even though I know a lot of effort has been put in to deal with this. In other words, the question is, are learning topics still decided for us? Can it be broader, wider, and more relevant? Maybe I'll stop there as I throw to the rest of the questions for the panelists to weigh in on this.
Yeah, Max, if I may chime in, I saw a question from Henry there asking about what are the key challenges in workers and mid-career switch to be relevant, as well as your points earlier on how do we help many of these mid-career workers, and whether it's the industry participation and support of some of these training. Maybe I'll just give my comments on this. I think there are two key challenges. from my perspective, having looked at this topic quite a bit. I think firstly is information asymmetry. I think you don't know what you don't know. So I think one key thing that we are trying to do through the industry transformation maps, through what Sunju mentioned about the skills framework, and what lies ahead, as alluded to by Susan earlier. I think the key thing is that well, you can't possibly look at like a crystal ball for the next 5 years. I think it's quite difficult. The truth is, it's going to be very difficult. So I think I mean, the key thing is to be able to at least suss out what's the key demand for the next 1 to 3 years. And it's going to be quite agile, very fluid. But I think it's important to do that, to be able to see what's going to lies ahead in the next, what the future skills, and therefore then you can, you know, or where the future jobs are, what the skills that you need to pick up, and what kind of future training that you need to roll out. So I think that's one important bit which I know at the industry cluster level we are trying to do, to sort of like provide some compass or some traffic light plus compass and direction for workers who are looking at switching or moving into some of these jobs. Not just make career switch, but also to the fresh school leavers. The second one is actually mindset, as I alluded to earlier. I think it's not going to be easy, but I think some of us have been in their jobs for like 15, 20 years. We know the labor market is bad. I shared earlier, there will be impacts on certain industries, and certain industries are getting it harder and deeper affected. So I think the key thing is to be able to bring with yourself your domain expertise, the experiences you bring. Yeah, I mean, a good example would be like the ICT jobs. I mean, ICT jobs are in abundance now. I think with this COVID-19 and the low touch and all this digitalization and virtual space and e-commerce, there's a lot of openings in this space. But many people think, no, I'm not a deep tech chap. No, you can't pick up Python overnight. I mean, I tried it half a day. It's tough. It's really going against the flow. So I think that the key thing is to realize that actually when I speak to many of these ICT or startups and SMEs who are in the tech space, they actually not they're not asking purely just for deep tech talent. I think they want people with domain expertise, because when they develop the tech, whether locally, offshore, or anywhere in the world, I think the key thing is to understand your business, solve problems for your clients, and to be able to do the business development. I think people with domain expertise, you could be in oil and gas, you could be in manufacturing, you could be in engineering, but I think you bring yourself the expertise, and knowing the software developments, the tech capabilities that the organization has, you may well be a very suitable candidate to segue into some of these sectors as well. So I think the key is that to keep an open mind, to know where the information asymmetry is there, know where the future jobs and skills are needed. I think many HR and human capital leads have been trying to do that within the organization, and the same for the tripartite partners and labor movement as well. We're trying to signal where to go. I think that's one. The other one is, of course, keep an open mind. It may be industries which you never heard of, or you never knew you would end up in. But I think that keeping an open mind, particularly in this very weak labor market situation, very, very vital, important for mid-career workers, including fresh school leavers. And on your point on skills future, industry playing a bigger role, definitely. I think industry is playing a very big role now. I know Ronald and Susan will be testimony to that. And I'm also involved in the financial sector tripartite committee with IBF, MAS, and a lot of support in that in the entire industry, in the financial sector, because I mean, it's one of those sectors where there are still some new opportunities. I think at the industry level as well as at the company level, I think everyone has to, it's a many helping hands approach to make sure that we leverage on some of these new jobs growth areas.
Yeah, Max, I want to chime in here. I fully agree with what Patrick said. Whether is it for a retrench or those who are considering what they want to change career, there are a couple of things they can do. I think one is to not just looking at narrowly look at this was the kind of job I do, this was what the other industry I'm in, but broadly looking at what kind of skills I possess, what kind of experience I have, and then what kind of work functions was I performing. Maybe the work functions irrelevant for another industry, in another area, but you need to do some top up in terms of certain learning area. I think that will give a broader perspective. And my Skill Future portal, we try to update as much as possible in terms of industry trends, including our Skill Future series. If you look at it, these are the top areas where they are most in demand. Let's say, is it on fintech area? Is it on data area? Is it on digital area? You can always pick them up and very quickly see whether you can go into a new sector. The other one is actually we do have, during this period, we do roll out a Skill Future, SG United skills packages for individuals, including traineeship, including mid-career pathway. These are all the options that we make available, and there are programs actually attached to it. On my Skill Future portal, you can find out, or you can come and talk to our skills ambassador. We're most happy to explore what are the career options you want to go into, which area you want to invest. And there is recently we already announced a Skill Future credit top up for individuals, and then a mid-career like myself. Actually, we have another additional $500 if you really want to pivot your career. Then really must take advantage of that. I think the schemes are available. Take a look at our website. If not, come and talk to us at our Skill Future skills ambassador. Thanks.
Okay, any comments from Ronald and Susan? If not, I do want to give some time for us to wrap up. But actually, some of the other questions have come in are very interesting as well. But I think Patrick and Sunju also have given their take. And some of these questions really is about, I mean, to put it very bluntly, you know, businesses are facing challenges nowadays. And there's a saying out there, when you're busy and all our workers are busy, there's no time to learn. When businesses are going through a trough, there's no money to learn. But I think at the end of the day, it's the entire ecosystem coming together to help workers. You know, government is doing a lot, the labor movement, you know, Skills Future, and then the organizations are all in on this. So I think that sort of wraps it up. I just want to give everybody 45 seconds. I'm sorry, because we do need to end in about 3 to 4 minutes. 45 seconds, your take or your piece of advice, if you will, to workers and talent out there. What's next? What's going forward? How do we go about, you know, progressing, improving, and going about in lifelong learning? Maybe Sunju.
Thanks, Max. I'm very motivated by JP Morgan and DBS efforts in developing their workforce. So my message is really to the employers out there to say that whether you are big or small, this is the best time now during this lull period to quickly rethink your business strategy and your talent and skill strategy. So do take advantage of what government has put forth in terms of Skill Future credit for enterprise, because this allows you to take advantage of that credit to rethink in a broader perspective of one year down the road exactly how you want to chart out the kind of skills planning, like Susan said, the kind of skills get where the job is going, and then how do you match the skills for the people. And we also roll out this National Center for Workplace Learning, NACE. And if you're really interested to help internally set up your in-house training capability, do talk to our NACE network of center from NYP to IAL. There's a huge network, and they are willing to come down and help you set up, develop your capability in-house. So do take advantage of this time, and then so that you can be competitive with a competitive workforce. Thanks.
Okay, Patrick, sorry, 45 seconds.
Yeah, just to keep it short and within 45 seconds, I think it's a message, a call out to all employers as well as workers in general. I think you need to stay able, agile, and adaptable. But more importantly, stay ready, relevant, and resilient. Ready with the new skills, relevant for the new jobs, and resilient to many of the changes that will be happening.
Okay, I'm going to jump to Ronald because I want to give Susan the last word. Ronald, you go first.
No problem. My 45 seconds is as employers, as managers and leaders, be the learning role model. There's no point you telling all your staff to attend this course, to be agile, when they see that day in, day out, you're still spending time doing the business as usual. So really take the time in your conversations, beyond just telling them what to do, share with them what you've learned. And when you role model that you've taken on these courses, you've also been as digital and agile ready as well, they will take that message, and I think that's far more convincing. But I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted because all of you are here. So I also encourage all of you, as you finish some of these conferences over the past few days, that you share the learnings with your managers as well as your teams as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Okay, I know for a fact from the employers piece, a lot of companies are doing a lot to try to actually help our colleagues in terms of reskilling, training and all that. And we know we get a lot of industry help, SSG and the rest of the bodies as well. My last word for all of us as a staff or as a worker in the workforce, I think one key word to me is feel empowered, right? The word empower. Do not wait for anybody to help ourselves, but we need to help ourselves. Maintain an open attitude. Start asking questions. Start looking for the right people to speak to. Even though if you feel that your job is not, in for a change today, but we really do not know what might happen tomorrow. So please feel empowered to do what you need to for yourself in the whole quest for continuous learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone. I'm sure the thoughts and perspectives are really, really useful, and people will take it on board as we all embark on this journey collectively. It now leaves me the panelists, which is Sunju, Patrick, Susan, and Ronald, and to thank all the participants for joining us today. Have a good day ahead. Thank you.